Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started here. I'm Jody Deegan. It looks like it's time to start this webinar, so we'll go ahead and get started. Some folks might be joining. Today we're going to talk about winning the day for service management. So thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join in on this webinar. And again, I'm Jody Deegan, training implementation coach with Nexstar Network, and this is something that I'm very excited about, and I wanted to share with you today. This is based on the presentation that Dan Friesen gave at the Super Meeting in San Diego, and Dan did an amazing job in that presentation, and I talked about this quite a bit when I'm doing coaching with members. How do we win the day for service management? So I think there are a lot of really important pieces here that we can use to guide our teams to help them see how we can win the day, and also some tools today that'll help you define what that means. Okay, so I want to share how this is going to apply to service management. So I'll invite you to take a moment and consider, what does it mean to win the day for service management? Please take a moment and think about that. What does it mean to win your day? Great. So does the company's big, hairy, audacious goal really always inspire your team? And you know, sometimes large numbers can be really hard to grasp. As owners or operators of a company, the annual goal that we've worked up to achieve can have pretty deep emotional meaning, but it doesn't always mean as much to our frontline teams. The larger the number is, the less we can relate to it. And this is kind of almost like looking at somebody that, look at a Warren Buffett, you know, who's got billions of dollars. It's almost hard to wrap your mind around that type of wealth sometimes. And sometimes our company goals can be like that as well. So how do we chunk this down into pieces that our teams can really wrap their heads around and get behind? Where would your team check out on the big number? These numbers can often be unrelatable to us. It doesn't mean we don't care. It just means that, you know, that we don't own that big number. So the bigger that number is, the more intimidating that can be. So some of our shops, you know, the big hairy number might be $1 million. You know, it might be 5, 10, maybe even $150 million. You know, we have some locations out there that they're really putting up some pretty big numbers. But what does that mean to our frontline folks? For the most of this call, we're going to be talking about service technicians and what that means to a service technician. But you know, you can apply the same philosophy to other people within your business. Could be CSRs, you know, AP. It could be anybody in the business. Okay, so we need to think about, how does the big company number, the big annual goal, what does that mean to us as individuals? And even as service managers, what does that number mean to us? What is our piece of that? Okay, because you know, we own a piece of it, but we don't own the whole number. Know and communicate daily goals. How many of you can honestly say that all of your techs know what their daily number is? So I'll ask you to consider that for a moment. What is the daily number? What is their daily number? And we probably all have a number that we need to make every single day to keep the lights on and keep the wolf off our back. You know, we know what our personal income needs to be, but do we always do a good job of tying that into what the company number is? And they really should go hand in hand. Do they know the company's daily number? Is our team really rallied around getting that number and achieving that, winning the day? Okay. All right, so where's everybody going? Okay, everybody's checking out here. No, I'm kidding. I thought this was a pretty good example of a team rallied around the numbers. Looking at the Patriots in the Super Bowl, against all odds, you know, down, what, 21 points, 23 points, whatever it was in the first half. They come back and they rallied and had an amazing. Whether or not you're a Patriots fan, you have to respect the way the team rallied around the number, okay? So you can't deny it's an amazing example of teamwork to achieve the goal that day. So the question is, how do we inspire our teams? How do we get them to rally around the number? And I want you to consider for a moment, the Patriots, sure, they're trying to win the Super Bowl, okay? So they've got a pretty big goal there. There's a lot of motivation involved in that stake. But are they any less motivated or exciting about winning than somebody would be on maybe even on a high school level or a college level, or maybe even a Pop Warner level? I mean, think about that for a moment. When people are focused on winning, when we've done a good job of motivating them on how to win, we want to win that day, we want to achieve the score, there's a motivation factor in there that sometimes we miss, okay? So I think the sports is a pretty good analogy for that. Next, we're going to talk about static versus dynamic goals. All right, so what does that mean? Now, I use the illustration of the bicycles because the bicycle on the left is a one-speed bicycle. All right, so consider that static. It's, although you're able to change the speed of the bicycle, really you don't have a great deal of flexibility there. Okay, so an example of a static goal would be when we have determined what a goal is and we said, okay, Jimmy, I need you to bring in $20,000 a month, 12 months a year, $240,000 this year. That would be an example of a static goal. It doesn't change, it stays the same all the time. And, we all know that our business has different seasonality. Okay, we've got times where we're busy. Some businesses are a lot more seasonal than others. Heating and air conditioning companies, of course, can be, like a wild firestorm in the summertime or extreme points of the winter. And the rest of the year, it might be downright slow, okay? A lot of companies are experiencing that right now. But if you had the same goal for your technician this month as you did in July, he's probably not going to really get behind that goal, and it's probably not a very realistic situation. Now, the bicycle on the right side is a state-of-the-art racing bike, multiple speeds, able to adjust for the conditions, and that would be an example of something that's a little bit more dynamic. So what I'll ask you to think about is, have we really set our team up with goals that are tailor-made for the seasonality of the business? And I've operated with both static and dynamic goals, but I think it's a little easier to relate to a dynamic goal based on the types of calls you're getting, based on the volume of calls you're getting. And I'll ask you to consider this too. Not all technicians are running the same types of calls. A plumber who's running, he's our repipe guy, he's going to have bigger tickets, bigger opportunities. Maybe a younger, greener plumber, he might not see those. Maybe a drain technician, maybe he's not running the top tier calls. He's still earning his way to those types of calls. So is it fair to measure our greenest, newest technician to our seasoned veteran who's always the top guy on the board? Okay, and if you are, does that really motivate that junior technician? Probably not. So I'll ask you to think about these types of things. The goals really should be personalized, they should be achievable, they should be tailored to the seasonality, tailored to the types of calls, okay? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But look at your plan. Hopefully we've got a plan in place where we've built what our expectations are for our teams, and we've backed that in. So what I'll ask you to do is look at your plan and consider, is it reality? And I think for the most part, businesses that attend the business planning workshops have looked at this from a pretty realistic seasonality standpoint. But, does it really pass the seat of the pants test as to, is this an accurate budget? Does this really make sense for what's going on here in our business today? So let's define the win. Okay, what does that mean? In order to win the day, I must hit the company goal. And we're talking about this from the service manager standpoint. In order to win the day, I must hit the company goal. So if I'm a service manager of the service department, I really need to have a number and that's a measurement. And going back to the sports analogy, it's almost like playing the football game without having a scoreboard up there that we can measure ourselves against. If there's no scoreboard, how do we know if we won the game? We might kind of feel like we did a better job than the other team, but the scoreboard is what determines the win. And our business is no different. We're looking for a scorecard. We're looking for a number. We're looking for did we win the day? Okay. So set goals based on reality. Things may have changed in the business. Weather sometimes doesn't support us. Maybe we've lost some key personnel. Outside events. For those of us that have been in the business a long time, we've seen a lot of things that are external factors like 9/11 or the housing crash of 2008. Sometimes there are a lot of things that can really change the landscape of our business. All right. If we've lost one of our superstar players, one of our unicorns, is it realistic for the rest of the team to be able to cover it? Maybe it is, but maybe not. So we need to look at this from where we are right now. Where are we right now in the business? And don't demotivate your team by driving towards an unattainable goal. Okay, because an unrealistic goal doesn't motivate anyone. And our key is how do we rally our troops around the number? How do we show them the win? And I think going back to the Patriots example, that's a great example of you could look at that and say, well, that's unattainable. But maybe, but it clearly wasn't. They did achieve it. And so we can't buy into the notion that, well, our goals are unachievable, but really look at them from a realistic standpoint and break it down by the KPIs that we expect our teams to hit and ask yourself the question, well, are these realistic goals and how can we get there? And another important piece I want to touch on, don't push your team to compromise their ethics. When we're really feeling the crunch, when we're really feeling the pain as a business, it's, sometimes the message that we share with our team is go out there and get them, give options, try to find things, find 3 things on every call, and I'm not saying that those are the wrong things to say, but sometimes the way that we deliver the message isn't received correctly, and sometimes things can be taken a little bit out of context, and then guys are out there really thinking they're doing a good thing, but maybe they're pushing the ethics, and that's not the right scenario either. So don't send the message to go out and plunder. Reputations are earned over years, but they can be lost in seconds. So follow the process. If you follow the process, typically good things are going to happen. I wish I had a dollar for every time I was with a technician on a ride-along and he said, hey, you really brought me luck today. And really, it's not about luck. It's about following the process, using the tools that we've got. Show your team how to win, all right? So show them how to get there. Show them how to achieve that win. The win can be achieved by following the process. And so when I talk about the process, we're talking about using the summary of findings. We're talking about setting the agenda in the greet step. We're talking about uncovering lifestyle, uncovering situations by asking lifestyle questions. These are all parts of the process. And revenue is a byproduct of the process. I'd like you to think about that for a moment because that's a very, very powerful sentence. Revenue is a byproduct of following the process. So here's a good example of that. Let's say, for example, you want to get into shape, okay? And I lived this last year. I lost over 50 pounds. Those of you that have met me, I was a little chubby, okay? And I really set a goal to get into shape. And I lost 50 plus pounds, maybe pushing 60, I don't know. But I didn't do it by saying, I want to lose 50 pounds. That wasn't really the goal. I had a number in my head, of course, but the goal is not going to get you to the result. The process will, all right? So by tracking the food that I eat, limiting the bad things that I eat, and tracking every calorie that I eat, make sure I have the right balance of proteins and carbs and fats, and doing all those things. Getting up every day, going to the gym, having a workout process. And so it was the process that helped me achieve my goal. and I still follow the process today, and it works. The same could be said for money, okay? A financial goal. You don't get rich by setting a goal to be rich. You get rich by following a consistent method of saving, investment, fiscal discipline. Okay, you can wish that you were a millionaire all you want, but if you're still eating out every night, spending your money crazy, buying new cars, it's probably not an achievable model because the process doesn't support the goal. All right, and so our service activities are exactly right. If we're focusing on the process, we're focusing on what they do on the calls, the revenue is a byproduct of that. Okay. Evaluate where your team is and what KPIs are an opportunity for improvement. So again, this ties into having tracking on your numbers and what your team is actually doing. And when you evaluate those, and if you're not sure, give me a call. We could look at these things together. Your business coach can support you. Evaluate what your KPIs are. Now, in Nexstar, we coach members to coach their teams to the shop average, okay? And as long as you're coaching to the shop average, you're going to see continued improvement. The trend should continue to move up, all right? But the KPIs that we're looking for are when you evaluate your team and you believe that your conversion rate, for example, should be 80%, and maybe your team's operating at 50%. That could be a great example of, hey, that's low-hanging fruit. I have a problem with my conversion rate, and that could be the opportunity where you win the day. Another thing could be an average ticket. For HVAC companies, we're looking for how many old calls did we have today, and what did we did with those? How many of those turned into turnover opportunities? If we're looking at a sales team, what is our closing rate? What is our closing rate on tech turns? What is our closing rate on marketed leads? How many leads do we have today? We have to identify based on the numbers, where is it broken? What is the low-hanging fruit, and what do we need to really do training on to get this turned around, and how can we fix it? So by evaluating those KPIs, that's really going to give us most of the answers of how we can find that. And showing the team, how do they win the day? And so when I say show your team, you can use scenarios by looking at how many calls somebody had. So let's use an HVAC company for this time of the year. We know that we're not getting the same type of calls that we might in the summertime. Okay, in the summertime you'll see more broken air conditioners, more demand opportunities, and those obviously are traditionally better calls. Hate to use that word better, but those are usually easier calls. Let me put it that way. Okay, and this time of year where maybe you've got a steady diet of more SPPs that we're running, how do we help our team see where the opportunities are? And you can do this by running some scenarios based on if we offer ultraviolet lights, for example. If we offer ultraviolet lights on 10 calls, traditionally 3 or 4 of those might say yes. Maybe it's only 2, but the better we get at presenting that consistently, you're going to find that number goes up. Okay, so if we sell a UV light on 3 out of 10 calls, what does that equate to in revenue? Okay, we might be able to win the day just on one simple activity, for example. What are the 3 things that we observe and we notice while we're in the house? And I've shared this with you before, but I'm going to share it again. Years ago when I was a technician, my owner said, your job is to find 3 things in every house. And I said, well, what do you mean? And I know this isn't consistent with the language that we like to use. But the point is, he said, how many times do you go in a home and they have the top of the line, the 21 SEER heating and air conditioning system with brand new ductwork and a zone control system, state-of-the-art control, premium filtration package, ultraviolet light, air scrubber, whatever. How many homes do you go into that have all those things? And I said, well, hardly any. He said, so let me ask you this. Does the rest of your team, does the rest of your customers that you see, do they deserve to have those things? I said, well, sure, why not? He said, okay, great. So your job is to bring those things up and present those to them, okay? And I want you to go into this with the mindset of at a minimum, what are the top 3 things that we can present to our homeowners that will improve their lives. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it that way. And it's pretty simplistic, but for me as a young technician, it was a game changer because I was looking at it from the standpoint of we're out here to sell them something, but when I kind of shifted gears and looked at it for we're out here to help improve our customers' lives because the things that we have to offer are really cool. You know, we have some great things to offer our customers, you know, from the plumbing standpoint, electrical, HVAC. We have products that our customers don't even know about. And, you know, they're not secrets. We can share these things. And it's a numbers game. You know, the more we bring up these really cool things and share them with our customers, the more times they're going to say yes to them. But our job is to put it out there, to share, to educate our customers, and help them see the features and benefits of things that can really improve their life. All right? So where does this process start? It starts with an annual budget process. We have to know what our number is to win the day. So let's kind of chunk this down a little bit. Let's say, for example, our company budget is $1 million this year, all right? And most of us can come up with that number. If we've gone to a business planning workshop, then that's a very intricate process, and we break this down based on seasonality, and we know month by month what that number should be, okay? And that's a really cool process, and so that's one way to get it. But if you haven't done a business planning workshop, you know, another thing is to look at what did we do last year? Or maybe we use a simple budgeting tool based on our seasonality of the business. And your business coach would be happy to work through this with each one of your businesses so that you know, based on what your business traditionally does, you know, and what I'm talking about here is every business has some degree of seasonality. You know, again, the extreme example might be an HVAC business that is doing, you know, maybe they do 18 to 20% of their revenue in July, and maybe in January that goes down to, you know, 6%, for example. A plumbing business is typically a little less seasonal, a little less volatile, but there's a trend of what months traditionally do we make X amount of revenue. So it starts with defining what is our number for this year. You know, if we did 1 million last year, maybe our number this year is 1.2, and then we chunk that down into monthly numbers. Once we figure out what our monthly number is, so let's say, for example, for simple math, our budget this month is $200,000, okay? And we look at the calendar and we determine Monday through Friday, excluding holidays, I've got 20 working days, all right? So if I look at 20 working days this month and I've got a $200,000 monthly budget, that equates to $10,000 per day, right? That would be our number. And if we hit that $10,000 per day, hey, maybe we've won the day, okay? So again, your business coach or I would be happy to walk through this process with you, okay? And it's pretty easy to come to that number even without going through a business planning workshop. There's another great tool that we have called the Daily Pace Report. And you know, I've used PACE reports for years. I can't imagine operating a business without it. But the PACE report will walk you through where are we at today. Okay, so let's say, for example, again, we've got our 20 working days this month, and here we are. We're at the 15th of the month. So let's just say, for simple math, we've already completed 10 of our working days. We're halfway through, and we're pacing to $110,000 on that $200,000 budget, where we're pacing ahead. That's really good news. We don't want to wait until we're at the end of the month and say, doggone it, I guess we missed it, you know. So think of the PACE report as kind of like the speedometer on your car. It's telling you how fast you're going, all right? And so by knowing how fast you're going, you can calculate what time you're going to get to your destination. And the PACE report's the same way. It's going to say based on how many work days we've done, how many sold hours we had, or how much revenue we had, we are on pace to hit our budget, or heaven forbid, we're going to miss our budget. So we need to determine what are the activities that we can do to get us back on track and catch it up, okay? The next tool that we have is the 3-day call board. And the 3-day call board looks at the volume of calls that we've got for today, tomorrow, and the day after that. because we all know without having the calls on the board, it can be very difficult to get our daily win. But it doesn't mean we throw up our hands and say, ah, shucks, we don't have the calls. That's another metric, and it might not be the metric that you own, but it's certainly a conversation that needs to take place in the business on a daily basis and drive how many calls do we have on the board today. And I'll take that one step further again for defining the opportunity calls on there. If I'm an HVAC company, I want to look at how many old equipment calls do I have on the board. If I'm a sewer replacement company, I'm going to be driving how many sewer calls, how many drain calls, how many mainline stoppages do I have on the board. If it's a plumbing repipe opportunity, how many old houses do we have on the board? And that's a metric that I'm going to try to fill, rather than just saying, oh, okay, I've got 10 calls today, we're good. Look at what type of calls you have. So the 3-day call board is a really important tool for helping you win your day. And then the next thing, and this is a really big one, setting individual goals with your team. And what I'm talking about here is coaching. Are we coaching our team? Do we really sit down with them and help them determine where are we going to go this month? Do we talk about where they did last month? Do we set some goals? And I'm not just, and this might start with a monthly goal, but in Nexstar, we coach to weekly, individual, one-on-one coaching with our teams. And again, that really helps you determine where you are in relation to the month. And I would also encourage you to include that technician's individual pace into that coaching. So if I'm sitting down with one of my technicians, we've completed 2 weeks of the month, and I can tell, if he's got a budget of a goal of $30,000 this month, and after completing 2 weeks of the month, he's on pace for $25,000. That's a good piece of information for you to both have, so that you can put your heads together and say, okay, how can we catch this up, and how can we get you back on track? What can I help you with? All right. So coaching our individuals to help them achieve their goal, but most importantly, knowing where they are in relation to that. We need to know if we're winning or losing. Without the scorecard, you're not going to know. All right, so individual exercise. What I'll invite you to do for a moment is, what are the activities that you are going to take to help your team win the day? What are the activities that you are going to take to help your team win the day? Please just take a few moments individually and jot your thoughts down about what are some of the things you could do maybe a little bit different, maybe a little bit better to help your team win the day. Okay, hopefully I'm not going to give you a ton of time there, but I would encourage you to continue that thought, after the call. And again, I'm always here to help you too, so feel free to, contact me directly. We're also, if somebody would like to share theirs, I can unmute you and you can participate in that. And so if you raise your hand, next on your control panel, there's a little hand signal. So you can absolutely raise your hand if you want. I can unmute you. All right. No questions so far? Perfect. All right. So if any of you have individual questions, or if I can help you out individually, you all have my contact information. Please pop me an email. I'd be happy to give you a call back and walk through this a little bit more. But help your teams understand, how can they win the day? And if you need some help defining what that means for you as a service manager, I'll be more than happy to help you win the day. But we want to win the day every day, and that's the key, because non-Patriot fans are just going to hate me. And I'm not a Patriot fan, so I'm just going to say that up front. But, they say football is a game that's won by inches. And it really is. And if you look at that game, if you look at the finish on that, the final winning touchdown barely across the finish line, that's a great example of winning a game by inches. And our day running service is really no different. We're winning this in inches. We're winning this in the processes on every single call. And these small wins always add up to really great big results. Okay. So thanks so much for attending today. I hope you've got some tools you can use there, and let's go out there and win the day and make it a fantastic month. Thank you.